Hello everyone, welcome to a best of 5 between two titans of StarCraft. It's soO versus INnoVation. This replay, and the subsequent ones after this game number 1, right? All come from the Alima League, which is an awesome weekly tournament cast by Maynarde over on twitch.tv/Maynarde, and is funded by, well, the community. Patrons supports this tournament on patreon.com/holymoly, and you can do it too. That way you can get your own replay pack and do your own casting. You don't have to listen to me or Maynard or anyone else. You can do it all by yourself if you would like to. But just also know that you're supporting an awesome weekly tournament. So with that whole spiel out of the way, this best of 5 was the finals of the most recent Alima League, and I really wanted to catch it, but the time zone's rather sucky for me, so instead I'm going to take the replays and cast it and find out what happened myself. So I'm looking forward to a couple of really good TVZs. We already got things started nice and quick here. In the top left as the red Zerg, it is soO. And his new team, Chivo. In the bottom right, as the blue Terran, it is INnoVation. And they are both discussing a ton of stuff. You saw Crank translate a little bit for us. And there we go. We have 3 barracks and the middle of the map, I would say. Yeah. And soO did see that. So it seems that within the last couple of months, it really has just been, if you're going to see a proxy racks, it's going to be a 3 racks. There's a time where it was 2 racks. You still occasionally see a 4 racks all in. But yeah, even though sometimes you see the Terrans trying to like hide the 3rd, I think that most Zergs are assuming that it's 3. So you see them, their little banter being translated. Because I guess the GSL groups they're in were similar. So, as you can see, pretty good friends here. This is a best of 5, instead finals. So they're playing for quite a bit of money, actually. And if you continue, if you support that Patreon or continue to support the Patreon, if you already are, then you are supporting how much money these players get, while also getting some cool rewards. So again, just make sure to check it out. So we already have the bunker rush started. Looks like soO's gonna go with the Roach defense, and that is, I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen that work in quite some time. Unfortunately, soO kind of got a late start to defending this with the build order that he chose just from the get-go. There's not really anything you can do about changing that up. If you go for a pull after hatchery, it just, you know, you can't chrono boost it. Like, you're just kind of in a tough position. So you see the Marines are actually getting really frisky. Going up to that high ground, took a couple lings, now going for that queen. Drones are going to be decent until that Marine count doubles. Right now, actually, it's totally doable. Here come the lings as well. The queen will not go down. Drones are gonna barely survive, but 6 in total went down with the whole shebang over and done with. That's still a decent amount. As you can see, INnoVation, despite losing those SCVs in the forward line, still has 6 more SCVs than his opponent. Still quite dedicated, though. And if these roaches are able to counter, get across the map, and actually do some damage, that's when INnoVation is in a little bit of trouble. But roaches are slow, so that's one of the reasons that this defense, I've not really seen it do quite a lot. The past few times I've seen it, either the bunkers take too long to break down, or the roach counterattack just doesn't really do as much as it was hoping for. But since the bunkers weren't really committed to, INnoVation was being really aggressive with his Marines, a counter of roaches might actually work out here. Not a lot of time was bought to get to a factory, and factories really where you see the defense from either the counter lings or the roaches or sometimes even a bailing bust, right? A bunker is done. INnoVation knew what he was doing, but but it's still a little scary, you know? Ravagers can tear down a bunker eventually. There is an Overlord. I was worried there wasn't one, but there is. And that's going to provide that high ground for the Ravagers to go ahead and poking away here. But until soO gets more Ravagers, the bunkers should be easily repaired. And that's where things get really difficult for a Zerg player who took so much damage from the 3 racks and now isn't actually doing that much damage, isn't breaking INnoVation. And, you know, do you really want to invest into more Ravagers is kind of the question here, or do you want to try and play an economic game? Because you did end up saving your hatchery. That's the good news, even though you lost the drones. The barracks is going to get a better idea of what's going on here, what's popping out of those eggs, also how much gas is being taken. Since soO still had 4 guys in total in gas, yeah, I would have predicted there were more Ravagers being made, and yes, there were. INnoVation now figuring out that he needs to build more SCVs, as this is the type of count that really starts to get dangerous. He's also being supply blocked, since he only has a certain amount of cash for, you know, the opening that he did. It wasn't like he could make a ton of extra supply depots just right off the bat. But you know, the time bought here from the bunker, the factory's done, the cyclone's out, the barracks are over, back at home, ready to produce, right? This isn't so bad. That was a little bit scary, to say the least. The 3 racks itself and then the counter of Ravagers, but it seems like this game is it's going to continue on for a little while. soO has recovered that drone count. INnoVation now adding on that Banshee to really just push away the Ravagers so we can finally get the command center, which was canceled, by the way. Just a little bold to put that on the lip against those Ravagers. So, yeah, a little bit of lost time there. And you do want to start making up for the economy. Even though soO was cut down to size in the very beginning of the game, because both hatcheries were left alive, and eventually, you know, injects start working up even off of only 1 base, they will be able to drone faster than you. Usually at this point, it's 2 CC production versus 3 hatch drones and, you know, the regular TVZ stuff, but it's only been that 1 CC producing. So you see what is a more comfortable drone count for a reserve player. Now even getting into a 3rd base, INnoVation might have gotten a Banshee, and is actually going into Cloak, but we already have Stim, for instance, on the way, a tank for safety, and this game is going to, like, I actually could go into a regular game, but the thing I was worried about was INnoVation would stick on defensive units too much, right? Not think about the next step here, but with the Stim already underway, he clearly has that next step in mind. What is soO's next step, I suppose, is now the question. We have the lair done, Roach Speed finished, Overseer being made to deal with the Banshee. There are 2 queens, but not many more, and there's no spore crawlers either, so this is going to do a little bit of damage initially. Overseer does finish, and the Banshee cannot take on 2 queens, so that is going to be pushed out. But it's getting some decent scouting and keeping tabs on these Ravagers coming across the map. So if soO was thinking about Roach Ravager all-inning, maybe, right, like a little bit later, he'd really have to rethink that, because now with 3 Banshees, I do believe that's the 3rd one. Yeah, it is. Even if you had an overwhelming amount of Roaches and Ravagers, it'd be a little dangerous to send them across the map with 3 Banshees just damaging your Roaches the entire way over. So I don't think that's going to be soO's plan, but he is still sticking on the Roach tech. We don't have a Baneling Nest, we don't have a Hydralisk Den yet. We'll see where that goes. I think INnoVation should feel rather confident against this style of play, especially if you do go into the Banshees, so you started your tank production very early. If they're going to go for some type of only Roach attack, we do usually talk about the 1-1 Roach all-in, which, as you can see, is just, I mean, the timing is just so weird now, right? Like, if he's going to wait for 1-1, that's going to be so long in the future. INnoVation will have Stim, Combat Shields, Medivacs. He'll have, like, 5 tanks, 6 tanks. And he might even still have the Banshees alive, because he's keeping tabs on the whole fact that it is continued Roach production. So Banshees being kept alive is actually kind of important. I think INnoVation's really got a handle on this one. I don't know. This is, anytime a 3 racks, 2 racks, whatever isn't just immediately shut down, it does seem to grab a good enough advantage. I'm not saying that it's super overpowered or anything, but there is the meme. The win rate of 2 racks, 3 racks, whatever is insanely high, blah, 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 but there's a reason we see it probably more than any other super early game cheese, and that is because there is a lot of times a lot of macro to be done behind it. INnoVation's playing a little fastly with the Banshees. Like, it's still 3, and there's still not a lot of queens to target them down in case they overcommit, but it's like a little, you know, if he loses all 3, that is soO's opportunity to go across the map, and perhaps even with 1-1 timing out quite nicely. INnoVation is keeping them alive. He's also trying to take a 3rd base right now? I didn't think he had a 3rd base. No, okay, no, he's not. So he is still on 1 base. Only 3 barracks, though, so the intent might to eventually be getting to a 3rd CC. This is something that soO was trying to keep tabs on and did a rather good job. Overseer running through, Changelings being dropped, so he knew that there would be a 2-base attack initially, and then whether or not there was a 3rd CC would have to be determined, basically. But if INnoVation's going to go ahead and attack with this army, then I am totally in favor of soO's position. If INnoVation is caught in the middle of the map, soO, he started to build up for that 1-1 Roach attack, right? It's timing out so perfectly. INnoVation making perhaps a critical error here. Like, well, yes, indeed, it was a critical error, GG. But, well, that obviously was a critical error when everything came together, and it's like, okay, what did you expect, INnoVation? I think more it's like he made a critical error in how he wanted to follow up this game. Clearly wanted to catch soO droning a little bit more, maybe even transitioning, getting a 4th base, and instead ran into a 1-1 Roach attack. Perfectly timed to defend against that, so that did not look very pretty. INnoVation maybe going for a third CC next time and just playing defensive might work out. But it is a best of 5, so he has those chances to try and adapt and change up how he follows up that 3 rack. So let's get into the next game. Welcome to game number 2 on Kairos Junction. In the top left, taking that last game, it is the Red Zerg, soO. And in the bottom right, as the blue Terran, it is INnoVation. Alright, so last game, INnoVation with the 3 racks. Fairly effective. Didn't kill the hatchery, didn't win the game like perhaps you would want with a proxy racks, but still put him into a decent position macro-wise. But instead of going for a third CC, INnoVation decided to go for a 2-base attack that was absolutely just stomped on by soO's Roach Swell. I thought INnoVation was keeping tabs with his Banshees on what he was up against, but I guess I was wrong. Perhaps soO just did a good job of hiding how many roaches he was truly getting. Either way, we go into game 2 in a best of 5, so there's plenty of chances for INnoVation to win this series still. soO going for a pool first this game might be a direct response, and in fact probably is, to the proxy racks, as INnoVation is not too shy about doing 2 in a row, doing 3 in a total best of 5. Like, no, he certainly does do it. INnoVation has been playing around with a lot of styles, though, so if it goes in a macro game, I don't think any of us are worried. INnoVation would lose out. In fact, that's where he's still known for being the best out of those mid-game pushes and just his supreme macro. And good micro, of course, but macro is what we usually name this guy. But he's also been experimenting with mech pushes and mech styles. And he's one of the guys that apparently has been making the Cyclone mech work, whereas for my own experiences casting some of these qualifiers and other pro games, like, it just doesn't look very pretty. But apparently INnoVation's making it work, so I would love to see that in this best of 5. But so soO, this is always funny, right? So soO, even though you can send out lings to your opponent's command center to get the snipe and the SCV and be generally annoying, it is, I think in this case, it was primarily for, you know, helping against a proxy racks. And you can add on the lings in case it isn't, right? So that's exactly what happens. INnoVation knows, probably, that is something that soO would do in the second game, so we SCV scouts. Not necessarily because he's afraid it's going to be a roach all in or it's going to be a lot of lings, but just so that he knows whether to keep his Reaper home or not. In this case, he knows. It was a perfect scout. He saw exactly what he probably anticipated seeing and is now looking for these lings, but soO, very clever boy, hides them just out of vision of that Reaper. I think it actually kind of skirted around here, and the lings just barely avoided his sight, so that's really nice. Now, that doesn't, you know, unfortunately, because the Reaper still did the job of protecting the command center, the lings won't get the SCV like they want to. That slight delay in the command center. But it does mean they can get another scout, where the Overlord maybe doesn't. It actually doesn't really add up to very much, to be honest. The Reaper did its job, basically. But it's something that you have on the other side of the map, so we'll see if they maybe get a clever scout seeing the Banshee or, you know, something popping out of that starport, because that's what we're probably going to see, is the Overlord eventually moves away. It's afraid of a Marine or a Viking or whatever, and then lings dart in because INnoVation doesn't have his, you know, sights on his supply depot, so he's not ready to pick it up. By pick it up, of course, I mean lift supply depot. So something like this, for instance, you know, he kind of shows Banshee Cloak. He might just go ahead and do it because it's a very standard opener, but he could cancel it, and then the lings run in, and suddenly, boom, soO is caught INnoVation doing the old trickaroo. But it looks like he is serious about going for the Banshees. The Hellions very aggressive here. The first two just going for the scout immediately. Sometimes if soO were to go for like a very early like 10 ling attack, and you send those first 2 Hellions out, it can be really annoying, but that would cut pretty severely into the drone count. And as we can see, the other 2 Hellions are nice and safe on the top of the ramp. So we see most professional Terrans being aggressive with those Hellions. They want that scout. They want to help out the Reaper. We have an armory on the way, so this is something that soO would definitely want to be able to scout. Now, he can scout this with multiple ways, actually. Not just by seeing the armory, but by seeing a later third command center. It typically happens after, let's see here, the third supply depot? Or the second one? I think it's the third. I actually do this build, so I should know. But anyways, but then if they don't, then you can be able to tell. But if it's a very fast armory attack, well then. By the time you are saying, oh, where's the third command center? The Hellbats are already in your face. That's what's happening here. Cloak isn't quite done. Almost a mistiming there. The Banshee already taken a ton of damage. Roaches are trying to come out here to help deal with it, but they're a little bit late. The Queen's still stacked up, not microing back. Now the Banshee adding tons of DPS as well, not being seen, not being killed. And all of a sudden, all those Queens that look like a mighty defense against this are gone. One is going to live, perhaps. Nope, she's going to die too. Now, the Roaches come out, and if they were just like 10 seconds faster, they probably would have absolutely just slam dunked this attack. But because they're a little bit slower, hey, suddenly the Hellbats get some worthwhile damage, even taking on the Roaches here, because we still have the problem of the Banshees. The Spore Crawlers don't really want to move forward because the Banshees would just move away from them, right? And that really is all soO is depending on right now, is Spore Crawlers DPS. Not just their sight, but actually their DPS, because all the Queens are dead. So this ended up going really well for INnoVation, who, of course, behind this has good macro. He's going into buy, he's got Sim, Double Engineering Base, eventually going to get those gases. And he still has his 2 Banshees alive, so that just in case the Roaches made their way across the map, he would be able to deal with them no problem, and it'd be a further wasted investment for soO. In total, let's check that units lost here. Pretty favorable for INnoVation. You might say, oh, 9's a big number. 9 Hellbats isn't that a lot? Well, they're Hellbats. They're mineral-based units that are basically now not even necessary. They wouldn't do much damage otherwise, you would think, as Roaches are now out. But you got 5 Queens, that's production, that's creep tumors, that's the anti-Banshee defense, and 7 Roaches, which do cost a slight bit of gas. So definitely good for INnoVation as he still continues forward here. Seems like maybe he's just a fan of going into 3 Banshees, maybe only when he sees Roaches. I would see that. Maybe that's something we can watch INnoVation consistently do in this best of, or perhaps this week for Katowice. But 2 Banshees go down. They didn't really do so much post that Hellbat attack, looking a little bit lame here. You definitely want to keep one alive, keep tabs on the army, where it is, how big it is. Unfortunately, she is going to take a lot of damage and maybe even die here. Oh, lordy. Okay. Doesn't die. It's very, very low, and you might not want to keep her on the front lines anymore, so you might just send her back to be repaired. Maybe that opens up an opportunity for soO to go across the map if he was building a ton of Roaches, but we have a supply block right now for him, and Zerg players are typically waiting for that 1-1. So INnoVation, last game, ran into a 1-1 Roach push. It was quite unfortunate. He died. This game, we're on Kairos Junction, which is a very popular 1-1 Roach all-in attack map, and he just had to deal with it. So that should be in his mind right now, and he should just be very mindful of his tank positioning primarily. The Banshee, I'm thinking, is going to be repaired. Maybe. But it should be scouting for where the Roach attack could be coming in, and then the tanks have got to be sieged, and ideally they're not sieged this close to each other, so INnoVation even fixes it, right? As you don't want Corrosive Biles being able to kill more than 1 tank at a time. And since Kairos Junction does have some, nice edges, if soO were to only attack in here, you could really abuse the high ground against it, which is typically where we see the Terrans hold against such an attack, by the way. But if they go here and you're predicting here, well then, you might be in a bit of trouble. So scouting, right? Number 1 priority right now is everything's getting set up for both players. soO, though, as we see, has already reached 65 drones, 4 bases. Doesn't really have a lot of creep spread. Those Queen losses in the early game really did hurt him, but he's building nothing but Roaches. 1-1 is close to finishing up here. INnoVation, once again, though, moving out at perhaps the exact wrong time. He's significantly down in army supply, and if his tanks are already siege, blasting away at the Roaches, he has lost a considerable chunk of time to defend. Here come the Roaches now. So the first time that INnoVation was able to see that, I believe, the Hellbats moved away prematurely. They died thinking that it wouldn't come across the map, something along those lines, and his natural is broken. I don't exactly know what the scan was for. I guess seeing the continued production? I'm not actually sure, but he knows he has to do something about this army. Now, here's where things get a little weird. Now, soO is the one that's trapped, and Zerg doesn't have recall. Tanks are going to be sieging up on all different sides. Huge concave of bio as well. They got their 1-1 upgrades. They got combat shields, and they are going to absolutely slaughter this Roach Ravager composition. The armory might go down, but 2-2 is already on the way, and that's probably going to be the most important upgrade of this game. Typically against Roach or Roach Hydra, upgrades are king, as well as medevacs, and of course your tank count. Yes, a lot of things go into it, but you're going to see a significant upgrade gap because 2-2 is still on the way, and soO stopped producing upgrades to do that attack. So now things have really turned, and while it doesn't seem like soO's in that bad of a position, 63 drones, okay upgrades, a ton of army supply. Remember how inflated roaches are, especially since he didn't take out the tanks, and he didn't take out the upgrades, and he didn't take out the medevacs, which is unlikely anyways, but still. So this is where INnoVation should be feeling rather confident. Even though he lost 22 SCVs, we see him at a stable 54. Mules can be dropped as well once he's unsupply blocked, I suppose. Well, he should be using his energy for something, but it might just be saved for scans. Perhaps follow-up tunnelling clause exists, or he just wants to make sure he doesn't get stalled by creep spread. But we know it's not very impressive creep spread. So he could probably use a few mules. There we go. Okay. All right, so 50 army supply difference. 2-2 has finished. As I was about to talk about it, and we are at 6 tanks now, and they are being very mindful, abusing this little position here, keeping the bio way in front. This is a little bold, however, actually sieging them right on top of that creep spread. It's actually very possible that soO was able to jump on him, as soO is maxed, but soO is trying to be cautious. He's trying to find a better angle here. He's also trying to do a run by, which INnoVation took a little bit into account. He had some units bulked up on the high ground. His Banshee is still alive, and even though she's super, super weak, she is going to be very helpful in defending against these roach run bys. soO not going to find as much as he wanted, I don't think, from that, but 13 SCVs is pretty decent. He still can't break this position. Now missing the high ground. He gets an Overseer in that overseeing mode. Actually, I don't know what it's called for Overseers, but even though he has the high ground and those tanks are rather stacked up, they got a lot of shots off. Tons of Marauders here with those upgrades. Roaches all types of clumped up here on the ramp as well. Banshee comes in. The hero, no, gets sniped by a Queen. But this is still going to go very well for INnoVation, who now is only facing 2 Queens, 4 Ravagers. 25 Roaches are on the way, but they're going to be coming out piece by piece. They've lost the Ravagers, take out the tanks as well, so any further tank production will be very, very, very useful. And we also still have 3-3 on the way because INnoVation did save that armory. And if he wasn't going to win the game right here, right now, he'd probably win it with a 3-3 push. soO has no follow-up plan. He tried to go for all army to conquer this push, and then maybe if he had actually defeated it, he would have gone into something else, but he didn't. And this is the last stand of soO in game number 2. That's going to be it. INnoVation has done it. GG, despite not actually seeing the roach attack incoming, being a little out of position. He turned it around in his favor, and he ties the series up 1-1. So let's get into game number 3. We're on to game number 3 on year 0. The score is tied up 1-1. In the top right, as the blue Terran, he is INnoVation. In the top left, as the red Zerg, we have Chivo's soO. Both players recently having good results in GSL. Both players going to be at IEM Katowice, which is, the time of this recording is actually going to be starting tomorrow, but who knows when I'm going to upload this, so it could be past, present, or future. You tell me, basically. This is on an older replay as well, but that's just StarCraft 2 things where they change literally one tiny little thing and suddenly you have to reboot your entire client to get into every replay. There actually hasn't been any patch changes. Perhaps, well, I should take that back. There haven't been any patch changes regarding this matchup as the most recent patch. I feel very like quote unquote there is the reverting the blink costs. So doesn't matter in this matchup, does it? Year 0, one of the biggest maps that we have. Lots of bases, very long rush distance between both opponents' naturals. Not likely to see proxy racks, although let's be real, Terran players will do it on any map possible. If there was an island map, I strongly believe Terrans would find a way to do proxy racks on an island map. I do. You build them in your base, you lift them to your opponents, hope that they go for some weird fast overlord drop 3 hatch play. I don't know. Sounds very unrealistic, but I really think they try because that's how Terrans do. So we don't have to worry about that here, and we saw soO go for that hatch gas pool, so I don't think he's too worried about it. To be clear, you know, it's definitely easier to defend against any proxy shenanigans with a pool first, but we have seen time and time again, even pool third, I guess technically hatch gas pool, right? Deal with it as well. It does depend a lot on you know actually scouting it, which that's the one upside to this map is that the overlords have a lot of space to cover for their scouts and you know, microing against it. So But that's not gonna happen this game. Maybe we get a sick ace match and INnoVation 2-Rax is there, but I did not actually watch these games. Cross my heart. Hope to die, all those things. As this was on... Actually, the finals at Lima League aren't on a bad time for me. They're like, maybe like 9 a.m.? Depending on how long Lima League goes. But that's usually when I'm waking up and still not even realizing I can watch StarCraft at that hour because I'm still literally waking up. Gamer life. Anyways. I say this as tomorrow I have to wake up at 4 in the morning, so that's the gamer life, really. That's the caster life, is waking up at 4 in the morning one day and 12 p.m. the next day, you know? I got some Reaper harassment that is, ooh, taken care of so easily. INnoVation's like, what? No, it's not supposed to happen. And that generally does not happen to professional Terrans, so... Very nicely done by soO. You can see in his, he worked out in his mind exactly how he was going to catch that Reaper, and it worked out absolutely perfectly. So the drone turns into the third base without any more delay. And they will continue to chat. These little chit-chatters. The Lima League has been running for like, oh my gosh, I mean 4 years at this point, maybe more. Man, that's a long time. And we have all different types of players joining up. In fact, this Lima League that this was played in had a nice number of newcomers. We also had some foreigners, since this is not region locked, it's just server locked. So as long as you can play on the Korean server, then you're good to go. So we have, you know, lots of people who also get to chat a lot and be in a more informal setting than, say, GSL or WCS or IM or something. And luckily we have the wonderful Crank casting as well. If you all want to watch in Korean, that is an option. It'll be on his Twitch channel. But I think for most of us, we're just happy that he is providing translations for the Korean, because this is where we also get to see a little bit of that personality, you know, GSL group nominations, and then basically it. This and that in the Lima League, and not much else. And that's where we get the unfortunate Korean stereotype of being faceless, right? So it's really nice when he's able to translate for us. Looks like we have a slightly different game here for soO in particular. We have a Baneling Nest, right? Well-timed lair. Don't think he's going to do anything, you know, suspicious with that, even though it's maybe slightly faster than necessary. It may have to do with him not getting a follow-up scout in the starport. He didn't see if there's a tech lab being added. And there wasn't going to be. It was just the Liberator harassment, which does grab a few drones. Queen is in position to take care of it. There's not a lot of drones at the third base anyways, but you can see that he did have to move a couple outs. Looks like there was a second Liberator built, actually, and that's going to be perhaps a little bit of a surprise. soO not moving his Queen. She will die. 3 shots. 1, 2, and 3. But it does move the drone, so at least she sacrificed herself for her babies. That's what happened there. Now move the Spore Crawler over. Even if you're sure they're not going to go into Banshees, it is pretty worthwhile to have those 2 Spore Crawlers, at least 2, for this purpose alone. Lings deal with the Hellions. INnoVation was hoping he was fighting soO being a little bit greedy or out of position. Sometimes you maybe hotkey the Lings accidentally and send him to the third base or something. But nope, instead gets punished for his little poke forward, loses his Hellions. They weren't going to be too useful, right, as the game goes on, but this is one of those awkward times where they probably should have been saved, right? You have not yet secured your third base and your production isn't really ramped up yet. Although since it is INnoVation, his timings are basically perfect on those barracks, whereas we mere mortals would still be building our barracks and we'd be absolutely screwed. Well, that's not gonna do very much. Okay. Maybe I'll be able to move that later on. I think that's what they're laughing at, is that the Liberator's stuck. Anywho. So I was talking about INnoVation. I kind of moved over to this third base because I assume this was going to take it, but this one does make sense, right? Like, in this matchup, Terran is generally the aggressor. You got those mid-game pushes, mid-game drops, right? And you are usually the one pressuring the Zerg player, so getting as close as possible to your opponent for those rally pushes, you know, it does make sense. But soO is not going to be greedy and take this base. There's not really any reason to. It's not a gold base, like, for instance, oh my gosh, what was the Gangnam-style Terran back in the day? I can't remember. I want to say Habitation Station, but I think that's wrong. You guys know what map I'm talking about. So there's not really any reason to break down these rocks. You don't have that direct of an attack. But if soO were to take this base, well, then he would have made a mistake. But anyways, the idea is as long as you're kind of being on the offensive while also having some defensive properties, you're actually defending your third and your natural when you rally forward. That's always good. Right, if you took this base, then you'd actually have a run-by opportunity. You know what? I'm gonna start taking this base. I don't know why I didn't. I like just listed all the reasons why it's a great thing to do, and I don't take that in my games. That's because I'm a dummy and I'm not INnoVation. All right, so this tank push, very fast. You know, some players would opt to just go purely into the Marine, but he went for one, tanks at a very safe time, so they would be able to protect him against roach attacks and ling floods to a degree, and then also two, to actually do a 2-tank push faster than you might have expected, more along the lines of like something you would see off of 2 bases, right? Just a little bit later. So it is an opportunity you can try and take advantage of, but the downside is you don't have a lot of Marines, right? And you are kind of still hoping that you're going to find some abusive situation. So INnoVation poking forward, getting creep tumors, and then immediately running away makes a ton of sense. soO is at the 75 drones. He's got his tech. He's got his production. It would only be a matter of time, as in like 20 seconds, before he had enough units to surround such a relatively small army. INnoVation, here comes the rest of it, right? I think soO realizes at this moment that there is a 3rd base, by the way. Like, he should have... I mean, he did actually see it. He just realized he didn't take the correct one to goop up. Muta's coming out up to a number of 14, 15. It's quite decent. +1 almost done, 80% done. 2-2 is on the way for the ground units. INnoVation's kind of along the similar lines here, and he's going to go into that ship plating, vehicle and ship plating, which seems to be a lot of the Korean Terrans' answer right now, even though there are reasons to go for the other ones. But anyways, we're maybe gonna have a fight soon, so I don't want to go deep into that analysis. Not yet, as this is where it gets really scary. So INnoVation cleared up just like a couple of creep tumors with that earlier 2-tank push, got away instantly, but is so fast with the momentum, you know, with his macro already spinning at a full gear here, that he's already taking advantage. Even though soO tried to immediately replace the creep spread, we have this big old gap where he just doesn't feel comfortable taking the fight, even with speed banelings. So he's going to continue buying time. He's going to choose to go for a pretty big run by, and he is going to find a 4th base building if he were to do that. But no, he changed his mind. I think he changed his mind. He's going to go for the surround instead, maybe cut off some reinforcements. Doesn't find any tanks, unfortunately. Oh, but he finds a Thor. Thor is not very good against mutas anymore, or against lings. Actually, they're not what they're used to be in this matchup. But here comes the surround, a little bit late on the right side, however, from soO. A lot of the banelings already got targeted down by the tanks, but more banelings coming from the right side is eventually going to clean this up. Muta's going to take care of the tanks. If the lings couldn't, and the medevacs, while they boost away, have quite a long way to go on such a large map, so we are going to see those mutas take down probably most of them. INnoVation is stimming along to try and save at least a few. He's going to save 2. Barely 2. And his production was good, so he still has more, but still, that was a lot of medevacs to lose. Decent fight there for soO, because remember, he has 4 bases, a macro hatchery, and his hive is done. That's why it's especially good for him. He didn't just stall out on lair tech. So 79 drones, very nice here. INnoVation, though, because there was no run by, gets up his command center on location. A bit of a greedy boy there, but it works out. Now starting to add in some marauders, give a thicker wall against those banelings, even getting some marauders slow. Very cheap, very fast upgrade. You should basically always get it. And is going to commit to another Thor. Yeah, he's going to continue building Thors. I mean, if you get 2 or 3 Thors and the mutas are clumped up at all, they will still die. Don't get me wrong. It's just that they recently moved to more of a like anti-broodlord role, or in Blizzard's mind, well, an anti like Protoss capital ship role, which, you know, I don't know how that looks, but yeah. Losing an armor means that they are susceptible to mutas and lings on the ground too, which they're always stupidly bad against. You'd think that Thors could just literally walk on the lings and kill them, but you'd be wrong. Anyways, so the +1 plating, while we get things going, shifting into that late game. This might be a very, very long game. Upgrades all on the way for every single person, being 2 people, I guess. Starting up some anti-muta defense, taking them very seriously. soO's not going into a crazy amount, just 16 and then ultras, but still something you have to consider a big threat. So the +1 plating seems to be all that INnoVation is going to go into for now. We might see him add on ship weapons the longer the game goes for the Liberators against the Ultralisks, but I don't believe that does anything to the kill shot count, so it's actually not really a necessity. But generally, if you're going to start off with tanks, you do see that +1 attack. Not for INnoVation. You know, instead going for generally buffing his Thors, maybe back to one of their original plating numbers, right? And then also buffing his medevacs a tiny bit. And they do also still affect Liberators, but you know, defensively, not offensively. Just interesting to how I see the armory upgrades chosen and develop as StarCraft 2 still develops after 9 years. I think that was like the anti-muta drop, now becomes an actual drop. Going for this 6th base, actually. This is the 5th base down here. A couple Lings setting up for a run-by, trying to take a Xel'Naga. Doesn't really work out here. INnoVation does add on Starports, Liberators, and a Fusion Core. That is going to be his response to the Ultras, and still somewhat kind of against the Mutas. You know, the same way that Thors sometimes look really stupid when there's only one of them, and you're like, oh, are Thors even good anymore? Liberators also got slapped down a fair bit against Mutas, right? There's a time 2 years ago, I want to say, roughly, where Liberators were a fine addition of anti-Muta. In fact, that was a big part as to why Mutas really fell off, along with other reasons, of course, but now they have been nerfed. They don't do as much splash, but if you get enough of them, if the Mutas are that clumped up, then yeah, okay, technically the Liberators can kill them too. But they are mostly for the Ultras, don't get me wrong. We now have another base on the way. So taking all the bases, and why not? He has a ton of minerals, a good amount of gas, his army's maxed out. This is going into Supreme late game TVZ, everyone, so we might even get to be able to see ghosts later on. A lot of Terrans very hesitant to get to ghosts. They're still kind of expensive, although if you've been around for StarCraft 2 for you know, since the beginning, you know that they've been changed from being very gas heavy to very mineral heavy. But anyways, they're also just hard to use. Fungal shut them down very well too, even though EMP sounds good. It's you know, Snipe's usually where it's at. So we do see some hesitancy to really go there, but they are a good addition, and we do see a Ghost Academy. Plus, nukes really, you know, if I feel like a decent change to StarCraft to encourage more ghost play would be to change the nuke cost to like even just 75-75 instead of 100-100. Because super late game TVZ, I do myself love to play with ghosts when possible. But also I would like to see more ghosts in professional play, and clearing up stack defense if you're really late game, or just clearing up large patches of creep tumors, or of course clearing up bases is a very good tool, as it gets harder and harder to actually get any drops or run-bys across the map the more that creep spread and overlords continue to spread out in the late game, right? So if you pre-cloak a ghost running across the map, it's unlikely they'll see that. So I'm just saying I'm a fan of ghost play. That's the TLDR right there. So I hope to see more of it. But you know, right now you got to set up your basis, your actual structures up first before you really start to get fancy with your composition. So we got the important upgrades on the way, including building armor, high-sec auto tracking. We do have +2 ship weapons, but also, sorry, plating, but also ship weapons, which I think is a good thing to see. Double armory this late in the game. You are starting to really expand here. Pretty sick game I think we got in our hands. That makes a lot of sense. Then extra command centers, both to replace any lost planetaries, but also for a couple extra orbital commands, and then you can start getting rid of some SCVs. Maybe go down to more like a 55, 50-ish SCV count. You don't really ever want to give up on drops, but because the creep spread's starting to get a little bit out of control and overlords could start maneuvering around the map, right, down here for instance, it's unlikely, especially 1 or 2 drops at a time, that they'll really do that much damage. And then soO could also just go for a lot of spores and spines because he has money and he can replace drones. So it gets difficult. You need to do like 3 at once, plus Liberator harassment, plus Ghost harassment. Well, that's a lot of Liberators. That is now 13 Liberators as 2 more just popped out. Still a good number of medevacs. 4 Thors. Those meters are basically useless. Although there's only 1 missile turret down here, so that would be a good place to attack. Missile turrets, not just anti-muta, especially as mutas die, right? But also, you don't want to have the stupid Corruptor P ability on any of your command centers, so putting down a couple extra missile turrets can be very helpful. Looks like we do have an attack here as Liberators siege up without soO perhaps noticing. He loses a decent number of Banelings. In fact, they crash onto a Thor, so not very good use of that. And he also just took a lot of damage from the Liberators. Lost like 3 or 4 Ultras there. But the planetary did go down, an extra command center went down, and some of that attack defense, 10 SCVs as well. Looks like a couple of drones went down to some Liberator harassment, and we do have Liberator range, advanced ballistics, so that does start to get very tricky to deal with. Now, INnoVation saw the Broodlords. How has his scanning been? I don't actually think we've seen that many scans. Yeah, he hasn't even seen the Hive. But you gotta figure that Greater Spire could eventually come out, so that is, I believe, why we're seeing Vikings. Unfortunately, we don't have a Greater Spire yet. We don't have soO going into Broodlords. So this Viking count already at 6, going to 7 at least. That's, you know, it's not a super big committal. It's like, yeah, that's not helpful. It's not the worst. It's not helpful. It's you know, that would have been better into Marauders or Liberators or Ghosts. Bringing that up again. We're getting some scans. I think see more army movement, but sensor towers are also helping with that. Defensive Liberator is very good here, but the missile turret's a little off center, aren't they? So they don't actually protect the Liberator. This planetary barely doesn't go down, so that will be able to help out against future run-bys. INnoVation not able to get that big bank yet. He's taking damage. He's invested so much into the very expensive command centers, 400 a pop, plus whether you determine orbital and planetaries, whatever else more. But if he can go ahead and get all these bases situated, then we should see a pretty rapid increase of minerals. Currently, gas not being a big deal as Terran be Terran. And if you're not trading out Liberators and Ghosts and stuff, then your gas count's actually pretty okay. What Liberator count? Still at 13. Okay, so he did just transfer over to Vikings. Well, yeah, in my experience casting and playing the game, and especially casting, better players than me, it is generally, for the Terran, a game of trying to wear the Zerg out, hoping that they get a little impatient every now and again and winning some defensive battles. If you move forward, you still are depending on a lot of siege units, so in this case, purely Liberators, but Ghost can also sometimes, in my head, be seen as a siege unit. And you're also going on to creep, so you know, the person who attacks is generally a disadvantage at this point. Planetary is going to go instantly. Bunch of missile turrets going to get killed too, so like 600 minerals there. With these Vikings, while I do still believe they were for a greater Spire response, they wanted to already get a jump start against what could be Broodlords morphing, do a fantastic job with their range, taking out Mutas and Corruptors on their retreat. Range in Vikings, pretty much the best thing they got. Otherwise, they're not that great of a unit. But that killed the planetary, so run-bys will now be a severe threat, and I'm talking like 20 Ling run-bys with the Juno Glands 3-3, a severe threat indeed to any orbitals or even any planetaries that don't have SimCity around them. You always gotta be careful. Sensor tower should be replaced, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's a smart boy. And another command center is gonna be taken. We should see a lot of fights around this area. And we should see this base be taken by INnoVation eventually, but SoO did a good job with his creep spread, blocking out for a little while, even catching a good number of Marauders, which at this point still are a little expensive. INnoVation has not yet gotten to that big bank I was talking about, since he is still taking damage every now and again from SoO. Speaking of SoO, we do finally have that Greater Spire. He has gotten up to +3 flyer attack, and even a Carapace before going into that, so they will be chunky Broodlords. Muta is also still providing some decent damage as the Thors are not taking them out that fast, but oh my god, so many Liberators. Parasitic bombs went down on the forward Liberators. I couldn't tell if that was microed or just, you know, trying to throw them down wherever, but that actually wasn't the most ideal Parasitic bomb we've ever seen. They take out 2 of them, but so many Liberators still left alive, dealing a ton of damage. The Thors died. Some of the bio died, but overall, okay defensive engagement there for INnoVation. As long as he still has his bases up, which he does now have this brand new base, but he really needs to get this one going as well. So those Mule Hammers are the most effective that they can be. He's been sent down to about 58 SCVs, and I think he should stop at 60, actually. We'll see if he does. We'll see if he even recognizes how many he has. If you don't know this, guys, in-game, if you hover over your supply, remember if you're playing, it'll be over here, you can see how many drones, or whatever. I primarily use it for Zerg, so I said drones, but you can see how many workers you have versus how much army supply you have. If you ever wanted to check, as when you get to these supreme late game scenarios, sometimes boxing all your SCVs or counting all the command center numbers gets a little difficult, right? The more you know. So anyways, back to the Liberators. INnoVation doesn't really seem to have a strong plan aside from the one I was talking about, which is just defend, 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 and hope that SoO gets impatient. I'm not saying it's the only plan that is possible, but when that is your plan, it does start to get a little scary if you're not just really obliterating the attacks. Oh my god, these parasitic bombs are beautiful! He got like 4 down, and these ones here, oh my god, the clumped up Liberators are so damn good. Vikings, I guess... Huh. You know what? I thought those Vikings were for anti-Broodlords, and they still can be helpful with that, obviously, but I guess they were there to cover the Liberators against the Corruptors. The reason I didn't think about that is not because I didn't realize their synergies, because it's usually a situation where your Liberators are covered by missile turrets or Marines, right? Like your ground army is still alive. But, okay. that fight kind of convinced me that Vikings would be a good addition to protect your liberators. So would missile turrets, yes, of course, and he should get those if he had the money, but that is becoming an issue. INnoVation not really able to get it to that point I was talking about. Never really comfortable on all his bases and just gaining minerals, and now even having an issue with gas, as he is replacing a lot of high gas units. This Viking thing is kind of blowing my mind. I mean, the other thing that the reason you don't really think of this being a synergistic like composition reason to get them to protect the liberators is also because parasitic bombs, they're gonna attack something even if they die, but that is what you're trying to do with the Vikings, is at least trade out the Vikings for a Viper, liberators for a Viper or Vipers. It just, as we see, like the Vipers are diving in because soO is so rich and they're getting so much out of it. So much. So even though the Vikings are this cool, neat little addition and protection squad, I suppose, it's not really working out. In INnoVation's ideal world, he has missile turrets on the front lines and Vikings kind of scoping around for Vipers. But it's not really working out that way. I don't know what the perfect count of Vikings is, especially with their upgrades, since they're both almost fully upgraded. But I wanted to say like 8 was a good number to have. That's I think that should one-shot Vipers, but I might be overestimating here. But yeah, you need to actually find the Vipers, right? And that's gonna be difficult to do when you're on the defensive. It looks like INnoVation has simply been beaten too much, to be honest. The Broodlords, he was very patient with this, by the way. Like, he could have tried instantly transferring them to Broodlords, but we know that INnoVation would have been at least somewhat prepared because his Viking count has been rather high. Instead, he waits until the army is basically dead, and then he morphs into Broodlords. Still has Corruptors to take care of the Vikings. Can still make Vipers too, right? And while the Vikings are being microed, this is not looking very pretty. INnoVation barely scraping together enough minerals and gas to replace army. Can't max out very fast at all. Never got this base up. Even scans it for creep spread / seeing if there's a hatchery there. We have some static defense moving forward. This is where ghosts might be more useful, right? If they are situated in a concave and they're a little protected by liberators, that you can start sniping, you can actually get EMPs on the Vipers, and you can start nuking if they get a little bold with their spore crawlers. But despite INnoVation going for a Ghost Academy, he never made ghosts. I feel like we're just watching a dead Terran, to be honest. Like, I was like, okay, something could happen for the first 20 minutes of this game, but nah, not anymore. soO has taken the map. He took it very, very quickly, too. INnoVation tried for, like, a minute to try and stop that from happening, but then had to give up, basically. And is still reaping the rewards here. Still got a decent number of minerals, although he is starting to mine out. I mean, we're down to basically 2.5 mineral bases here for soO. Parasitic bombs, I said plural, but maybe singular. Still do the damage they need because there's so many Corruptors. GG is called. soO takes game number 3 in a very long macro game. Let's see what game number 4 looks like. All right, it's game number 4 between these two Titans in the bottom left, losing that last really, really long macro game. It is INnoVation. In top right, as the red Zerg, we have soO. You know, sometimes after a really long macro game that you lose, whether you're Zerg, Protoss, or Terran, sometimes we see that cheese, you know, just the 2 base all in, the proxy racks. It can certainly happen. But apparently not this time. INnoVation takes that loss with grace. And we probably won't be seeing another game like that just because Year Zero is the biggest map we have that does tend to accommodate splitting of the map, right? Whereas if we were to look at this map, there's still a decent number of bases, but it's not nearly as big and it's not nearly as splittable. You start to fight over, for instance, like these top 2 bases and things that are a little wonky. So you know, if you're worried about Supreme late game TVZ, maybe you have some thoughts about your late game per your race, you don't have to worry about it after that. Still have to worry about the mid game though, and it's not like soO only wins the late game. We did see soO go for Ling Baneling, right, last game, whereas other two, he was going for Roaches. Let's see what he chooses here. A new Repugnancy. Is that an SCV Scout? It is indeed an SCV Scout, so... pretty wary of the early pools. And soO is still a player that could go for even a 2-base Roach attack. Not exceptionally common. Especially because, you know, the Reaper usage from pros is quite good, but... I think we still see, like, once every blue moon, a 1-base Roach Rush after the early pool. And that's the sucker punch right there, where your Reaper gets drawn back because of 2 Lings, and you're like, oh, you're cheeky, and then suddenly Roaches appear, and you just have no idea because you didn't SCV Scout. Always sucks. And honestly, SCV Scouting, I could really see this becoming just a trend, because you don't just get the confirmation that it's not something sneaky, but you also can block out the 3rd base for a little while longer. I could see it happening in the future. It hasn't happened really yet. But sometimes you do see that SCV even throw down like a bunker or engineering bay. This is a map where you could theoretically get either or base. For Zerg in this matchup, I think it's a little... Or actually versus Protoss as well. It's like... I know there's preferences for one or the other, but I think we'll still see some developments as the maps get played on bigger and better tournaments with more and more experience. So you saw soO kind of looked like he was going to take this base, but then did in fact take this one. But it's also one of those things where if you are going to go into a macro game, you do often see more about the 4th base regardless. Like, it's not about attacking the 3rd base, it's attacking about the 4th base. So how much creep spreaders are at the 4th base is more of the question here. More what the INnoVation wants to figure out. Because right now, he just wants to know that it's not a 2-base all-in, and he's figured that out by now. The Reaper is not really going to be able to scout for, like, 3-base attacks, but that's where the Hellions come in, and as I said, like, the scouting in this part of TVZ seems to be mostly figured out by our Terran players. INnoVation bothering to raise his barracks to kill an Overlord, and also bother to get 2 Marines. That's a little bit scary, I would say. You know, sometimes you see more than even well, more than even a Reaper, but let's say more than 1 Marine as well. And you might start thinking a little bit about, like, Hellbat attacks. The classic version, one of the first ones that was developed, was the Medevac drop one, where you dropped, like, 5 Marines. However many you were able to get from the barracks with your Hellbats. I call that the classic one, but I don't actually know which one was invented first. Hellbats were introduced into StarCraft 2 and Heart of the Swarm, which was like 2014, so that's a long time ago. And initially, they were used comically against other Terran players. It was a very silly, silly TVT time. Anywho, Baneling Nest it is. No Roach Warren for soO. INnoVation goes into a 3rd command center pretty quick into that stim. Once again with a double Liberator and then fast into the tank. Again, this is 1 part defensive, 2 part, like he can do that tank push that we saw on Year 0, which did set him up for a nice attack that soO had to take very, very seriously. But soO did end up cleaning it up rather well. Liberator Harassment doing okay damage here. Hellions really looking for a great spot to run in. There's really not that many Lings, and if they line up, then perhaps INnoVation could barbecue them and then still slip in with 4 Hellions alive. That's exactly what he's looking for. Not really finding it, and the Queens are tagging the Hellions, something that you can only do if you know you have the Liberators on lockdown. Well, that Queen came in the nick of time, didn't she? Actually, uh-oh. Second Liberator does pop in here. No Spore Crawler. Queen does maneuver into position. But a lot of lost mining time. Has to re-maneuver. Hellion still poking and prodding. I mean, this is all INnoVation's getting some pretty damn decent macro going on here. So don't try this at home. Lots of denied mining time. In fact, soO's still a little messed up from it. Trying to deal with the Lings. Trying to keep them alive. Barely doesn't get that last Hellion. There goes a tank. There goes the double upgrades, you would assume. Might have been a little gas starved for a second, so he thought he started this +1 armor, but he didn't. That could be a pretty big mistake. So a bit later into the upgrades, not totally unexpected. All in all, has dealt with the harassment okay. but certainly not perfectly. 9 drones in total loss, plus that decent chunk of mining time. And uh-oh, okay. Whew. Didn't dive on top of those. Tries to get into a corner to take out the Lings first. Doesn't really work out. And the Hellion threat is now done and over with. INnoVation, though, now with the barracks production, doesn't feel too scared. Has his third CC on location and has a decent number of units to protect it too. More than decent, really. We don't have a Spire this time. We have a Hydralisk Den. INnoVation did, in fact, forget that second upgrade, now realizing as he slapped his armory down, so he will have a slightly awkward timing. And speaking of timing, we don't have 2 tanks this time, we have 3 tanks. And he is headed towards the third base, which doesn't really have a ton of creep spread. soO's queens were being used to one way or the other deal with the Hellions, deal with the queens, or Liberators, sorry, and had to... Some were actually killed. There wasn't a lot of creep spread. It's something that INnoVation's trying to take advantage of, being very bold. His tanks on the front line, he still can go ahead and target fire the Banelings. In fact, the Banelings, it almost looked like it was on purpose. I don't know why. They just explode on top of the tanks instead of trying to reach the Marines. I guess soO figured they wouldn't be able to reach the Marines. You know, they're on creep spread. They did not have centrifugal hooks, and there was a ton of Marines left over, so I can kind of see why, but it ends up being a situation that soO just really can't recover from. Now Baneling speed is done, but one tank is still alive on the low ground, and INnoVation with a crisp attack on that third base just plows right through our Zerg player. That's it. soO cannot get enough Lings to recover here. GG, INnoVation. 25-minute game number 3 into an 8-minute game number 4. That means we're going to go into an ace match. Game number 5 coming up soon. Welcome to the ace match. It's game number 5. In the Lima League, there are only 5 maps. So this is the default last map. No one chose this. They were both forced onto King's Cove. In the top left, as the red Terran, it is INnoVation. In the bottom right, as the blue Zerg, we have soO. We got some long games, we got some short games, we got some cheesy games. We just about had everything. I guess we haven't really had a strong mid-game back and forth quite yet. Last game ended abruptly. It really wasn't supposed to. soO wasn't necessarily being that greedy. Of course, you could always say he was. He didn't have enough Lings, didn't have enough Banelings, so that's always, you know, could be said, but I think at this tip-toppity of a level, he was just cutting, he was trying to cut the right corners, right? That you're gonna have to do. If you don't cut this corner or that corner against a powerhouse like INnoVation, you're gonna fall behind in other ways. It really was taking the fight before centrifugal hooks. I didn't pay attention to whether or not he got that as soon as Lair finished, or if he prioritized upgrades over it, but that is one of those things you would go back and look at and say, oh my god, that 12-second difference was the difference of his Banelings being able to connect with the Marines. Because I truly do believe soO wanted to connect to the Marines and then realized he wouldn't be able to. So he just decided to at least try and detonate the tanks, you know, get some splash damage. And you can't really blame him for that. That was the best choice probably of all the worst choices, the terrible choices that he had. But waiting for centrifugal hooks, having a bit more creep spread. If he had another line of creep tumors, right? So we saw like a beautiful line of creep tumors that were very, very close to being able to be pushed even further. Imagine they are pushed further. You know, let's say the extra 15 seconds that maybe he put onto that, and then INnoVation is a little more hesitant to get right up against that wall. What he did was actually pretty greedy, to be clear, to be fair. Greedy in the sense of, you know, risky. There we go, better word for it. And that INnoVation, that was like the second time in the series he was bolder than you would think. He pushed onto or very close to creep with fully on-siege tanks, where usually the advice would be to siege hop as soon as you see creep tumors. So that also contributed to it. soO thought he had more time. But that's those are things that can kill you at this level, right? So we have a normal setup here. SCV Scout did go down. Decided not to do anything with the third base. Reaper AI'd incorrectly, I guess. Yeah, he probably spammed the movement key one too many times, so it AI'd a little inappropriately. It really wasn't supposed to die. It will not affect this game, fortunately for INnoVation. If he assumes that soO is doing everything above board, then he would be correct so far. I guess I do still have 2 out of 3 on gas, but that might just be what soO does. Hellions are going to get that follow-up scout anyways, and this might even be on purpose. King's Cove has given me some troubles with AI pathing before, though, so I'm not... Okay, yeah, it's on purpose. So he's checking to see if there's any lings being sent across the map, I believe. Which is really nice. He's also scouting for the 3rd base, obviously, which he does see. This one is usually never taken. So I'm thinking he just did that just to scout that if there are even, like, 16 lings, you know, not a ton in the grand scheme of things, but this early on, that is a nice amount. He'll be able to see it, pull the SCVs, and keep his Hellions maybe on the ramp or on the high ground behind the supply depots. Because that is something you might be able to... You might try and get away with if you were to kill a Reaper. Usually when the Reaper dies, it's like... If you weren't already planning on doing something, it's like, you really change your mind. Sometimes not. Anyways, Overlord gets some decent scouting in the main base. He sees that once again. Same build, 3 games in a row, it looks like. Although... Okay, yeah, no, he is. Am I crazy or did he cancel Stim and restart it? Okay, I don't know. Okay, well, anyways. Stim is on the way. Tech Lab should be added to the factory. Double Liberator. soO, as I was saying last game, didn't have a perfect defense against the Liberators, and truly his queens being moved side to side so much was a contributor to the lack of creep spread. Maybe he'll go ahead and invest into that 3rd Spore Crawler, something that you would want to skip if you think you can, but if it takes away X, Y, or Z, then maybe you don't. Maybe go ahead and invest into it. This Spore Crawler is a little out of position, but there's no drones to the 3rd base yet, so he's only paying attention to 1 or 2 places at a time instead of 3 or 4 places at a time. That's where things get really scary. Okay, I see. This is not how I usually see the wall off. Usually it is still diagonal, but okay. Alright, I get you. Maybe I'll try that. Liberator grabs a queen and barely avoids a Spore Crawler. Hellions once again darting around looking for the drone kills, and the queens have to safeguard their babies, both their drone babies and to an extent their ling babies. With good Hellion control, this number of lings can be barbecued up. We have a queen going down because soO was distracted once again. The Liberator in the main base being an absolute baller, but will unfortunately die. Lots of lost mining time, distractions, so queens did not end up with the transfuse. Hellions dart into where the lings were, so that did not go too well, but the Liberator comes in at the exact same time. This is where you get the money shots, man. This is how you actually get damage done, is by doing everything at once. So if you could just do that in your own games, guys, then you would be INnoVation too, okay? Easy peasy. 8 drones in total, with his Liberator still sharking around. INnoVation, not really missing a beat on his production. Last game, he missed his +1 armor. Not this game. Not this time. soO, I do believe, has gone into much faster centrifugal hooks this game, so... As I said, I didn't pay attention to the exact timing last game, but that was something that contributed to his loss, and he is correcting that. So he's even getting it a little fast. He doesn't actually need it this fast. But he saw what looked to be the same build, and it was, so he's predicting one of the same attacks to happen. Macro hatchery a bit faster than you'd expect. It kind of goes in tandem with the 4th base a lot of the time, so slightly before, slightly after. So I expect to see the 4th base. No, maybe not. Okay, there we go. Spire is his tech choice this game too. Now we saw him utilize the Spire pretty well in the Year 0 game. Not that it was a huge contributor to the success of the game, but he was able to get to mutas and use them. He didn't die prematurely. And that's kind of what you're worried about, is that mutas don't really pay for themselves until they're in a higher number. You're still depending on lings and banelings and creep spread, which, once again, not the most impressive creep spread. Again, like 10 seconds later, and these 2 creep tumors are already spreading out to here. Really nice attack. Catches the 4th base. Forces a cancel. soO is up against, you know, Marines of Combat Shields. They're about to have 1-1. He needs to get a decent surround. He does have a decent number of queens. Maybe a couple of tank shots. That's exactly what they want to do. But INnoVation wants to focus her on top of the banelings. He does so 2-3 times. Takes out every single baneling, and that's going to be it. This push just too powerful. Year Zero didn't get close enough to anything threatening, and he was able to take care of it. But the next 2 games, it was always on top of that 3rd or 4th base, forcing soO into a very uncomfortable position. And even though this game he had difficult hooks, it was still a case of not being able to get those Baneling connections. Good focus fire from INnoVation. If you guys could just go ahead and harass as much as INnoVation plus macros perfectly, you too could get such a deadly tank push. But very nicely done. Awesome best of 5 between these two. INnoVation does take the win 3-2, takes first place for the weekly, which means he'll be in the monthly if you guys actually watch the Elima League, which you absolutely should. Twitch.tv/Maynarde. You will be seeing INnoVation and probably soO, as a 2nd place usually gets enough points as well. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to look at the Patreon if you want the sub replays or just want to support an awesome StarCraft 2 tournament. Patreon.com/holymoly. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you later on whatever YouTube video comes up next. Bye-bye.